All right, here we are, Novak News on Monday. Bidan and Billy, we were talking about Sydney. Has Sydney had its run? Where are buyers turning next? Stay tuned and find out more.
Good evening, Bids.
Hello. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, been busy, eh?
It's been a busy day.
Very busy day.
A big day actually. Started off looking at new properties,
Yeah.
then finished off really just cooling through the weekend, and here we are, Novak News, talking about Sydney versus really all the other states.
Yeah, basically.
And capital cities.
Mhm.
It's a little bit like a state of origin.
Yeah.
I feel like this conversation, it's controversial because I think for a while Sydney's had a really good run, and now
Definitely.
it seems like
Plateaued a little, I would say.
some say plateaued.
Yeah.
Some would also say reached a point where affordability is on everyone's mind.
Definitely.
And people, let's face it, turning to other states and other capital cities looking for opportunity. That's what we're going to unpack tonight.
Definitely. So I think pretty much everyone has been noticing it throughout the time. Property market has gone quite up, and with the pricing going up, so is the mortgage and so is the rentals. So I think everyone has been experiencing it firsthand, like even from shopping centers to running their business, from family, friends. So what is actually happening? So does this keep going up, or does this stay firm now?
Well, the outlook for 2025 and 2026, it is positive. It is price growth across the board. National growth trends, houses forecasted to rise 3.3% in 2025 and 6% in 2026. Units a little bit more, 4.6% in 2025 and 5.5% in 2026. Look, there is a demand for affordable price points, and that's nationwide.
Very much. I think that's why we're seeing more people, like when we're doing open homes, we're seeing more people in apartments because the housing price have gone so high up. Like people are coming to look what they can afford.
Yeah,
which are apartments. So we're seeing a bit of surge there in open home numbers, and people who are not being able to go to the suburb they like, they're going to the next suburb. So I think which kind of impacts the price in the whole surrounding. I think we had this good terminology called the bridesmaid suburb. So if you call Manly as the bride, which is very hard to touch, right? Bride's already taken. The entry point is very tough. We go to Manlyvale or we go to Balgowlah, which is kind of the neighboring suburb. So people are kind of getting creative in that way.
Yeah,
I would say.
And therefore we may be seeing that, not just with suburbs, but with cities and then states.
Yeah, definitely.
It has a knock-on effect, and you do tend to find. We were speaking about this off air as a team. You do tend to find that your blue chip locations, when they go up 10%, it's very, very rare you find the neighbouring suburb or the 5 kilometre, 10 kilometre radius around it has no movement. Quite often it follows trend.
Definitely.
So I do think the growth you'll find over the next 12, 24 months will be in the latter half of the year as rates come down again. It's going to add more fuel with borrowing capacity and lending into the market. And then we've got to go over an election, which is coming into May.
Yep, I think that has created a bit of uncertainty in the market as well, with the election coming through. Do we still buy? Do we wait for a while to get it a more stable before jump into something? Because I think it's a commitment for everyone, like getting into a new business or getting into your first home or a second home. So I think that with that uncertainty, we can kind of feel that on the market, like people are not jumping quite straight away.
Yeah.
Right.
Now the question we're going to answer tonight: has Sydney had its run, and where are buyers turning to next? Liz, if you don't mind, can you bring up the data? We try to look at this data as much as we can, so we give you an unbiased opinion. This is really interesting. Like you've got houses and units divided. You've got 2025 and 2026. And what you're looking at there is the forecasted growth. Now, KPMG did a really good report, obviously one of Australia's biggest consultants when it comes to analysing this sort of data. In 2025, Perth leads 4%, from their article, followed by Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, and Darwin. They tend to be probably the suburbs we hear the most.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask, well, if you're not buying in Sydney, where are you buying? That list seems to come up most common.
Definitely.
Sydney versus Melbourne has always been a really, really controversial topic.
It's a kind of head-to-head, I think. Like people from Melbourne said they're great, people from Sydney said they're great. So it's a losing battle.
From what we can see here, for the year ahead, they actually come in very, very similar.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing here is we're splitting hairs in some cases. I think you find there's micro markets within the broader Sydney and Melbourne market as well. What we see on the northern beaches is polar opposite to what eastern suburbs and western Sydney sometimes is reporting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll find the same in Melbourne. But the bottom line is here, you've got to be making, I think, local decisions and talking to local agents.
Definitely.
And then doing the same thing when you're comparing apples for apples. Just taking that into consideration, because it's not a real one size fits all. Like these numbers here, they're good for insight, but they're not really going to be the bottom line.
No, definitely. This is like the average. Like if you had 10 different suburbs, they just make a good average. Like when they do Sydney, it's all of greater Sydney.
Yeah.
And like Billy just mentioned, like in Sydney, east, west, and north, they all are performing different at the same time. So a very good example, just in terms of rentals, in northern beaches, people are still struggling to find any property, the one they want. There's lots of people for open home. They get snagged at day one. But then I had a family member looking in the south, in the Sutherland area, and they were saying, there are properties everywhere. Like they got application approved on 2 different properties.
Yeah, right.
And here, like it's even lucky if you get application approved.
Yeah. So
both are Sydney is roughly, I think, 40 kilometers away, and you see that much difference.
Yeah.
So while looking at the whole stat, it's kind of an average of each suburb, and you kind of have to dive deeper into where do you want, because one area is doing better than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite often it's a short-term trend. You've got to look at these things over a 10-year cycle. Northern Beaches property value over a 10-year period is just astronomical. The sustained capital growth, and it's compounding. It's compounding every year on year. It's not just a quick 2 to 3 year rise on the back of smaller sort of reasons. It's and an example of that is infrastructure. You're not finding a suburb in parts of Sydney and Melbourne that just have these 2 to 3 year growth periods just because a new airport or a train station went in. Somewhere like the northern beaches, you're buying blue chip stock with compounding capital growth over a long 10-year period. It's really crazy. But 2025, again, splitting hairs, Canberra and Melbourne, they're saying 3.5% forecasted growth, Sydney 3.3%. And for 2026, they are saying Melbourne 6%. Sydney 7.8%. There you go.
It's double than last year, double than this year. So if you look at Perth, it's from 4 to 4.6, but Sydney and Melbourne, they've pretty much doubled it.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot going on as well. Like I was looking at it yesterday. I was trying to find out, there's new metro lines now around Sydney. How does it affect the suburb price?
Yeah.
So I looked at the Hills district. So the metro is going through Castle Hill and all that area, but right next to it is Baulkham Hills, which is a very big suburb as well.
Yeah.
So in the last 3 years, Castle Hill has gone up by 76%.
Wow.
Because of the metro. But the neighboring suburb, Baulkham Hills, has only gone 37%.
Yeah, wow.
Just the difference of that metro and that accessibility has made a big difference. So I think if I'm a buyer looking to get into some location like that, there are new metros that are getting built right now.
Yeah.
So I think I would be looking more into that if I'm in Sydney. So I think it'll be the same in Melbourne, Perth, or Adelaide. Where's the next infrastructure happening?
Infrastructure is certainly a big government draw card for impacting local property prices. Also population growth. Where the population's being distributed, it tends to be away from capital cities. Sydney and Melbourne, there's so much competition as it is. The government's encouraging people to start their Australian experience outside of these two capital cities. So again, that makes a bit of a difference. Third, which again is not reported in the news, is I reckon buyers agents have a huge impact
big time
on local. And what I mean by that is buyers agents or property advisors such as accountants, solicitors who are experienced in buying interstate, if they're reporting to clients that Perth or Tasmania, these regional parts of Australia that are experience great growth, and if they're buying and investing, interstate, then there's a huge flow of cash flow there as well.
Definitely, because I think if I'm a buyer, I would look for a source, and at this stage, if you're not a real estate agent, your only source is your local news or your buyer's agent.
Yeah,
like whatever you hear while scrolling on social media, I'm like, oh, actually, that might happen, because I've seen a lot of my own families. They take that influence, saying, oh, there's a new airport being in Western Sydney now, the property price will go up, and now they're bought all the way there and traveling almost 2 hours one way for work, because they say, oh yes, they were influenced by the news. Or people now saying Perth is going so high up. It's again another controversial topic. Buyer's agents do help people buy interstate as well. So who you're talking to, and I think there's a lot of influence around. And like Billy mentioned, the best information you can get it from your local agent.
Yeah, certainly. I think local agents are going to give you the insights you really need, and everyone's strategy is going to be different as well. There are locations which experience really high growth, but if it's an investment mindset, you then got to consider rental
yield.
Yields and also vacancy, because you don't want to be stuck with a long-term property that you can't rent.
Definitely.
So there's other considerations there. I think my takeaway from the data we've just had a look at and the experience we conversations we have day in and day out is it's a long-term decision. If it's done right, it has huge long-term gains. If it's done wrong, it's got long-term pain as well.
Definitely. So, and at the end of the day, you want to decide as well, like, is that going to be a forever home, or will it be outgrowing that in a while, or is that going to be an investment? Because everyone has a different outcome from the investment. Some want good rental yield, so it pays itself off. Some won't mind a bit lower rental yield, but want a really high capital growth. So when they sell, they have that big, almost double their investment. So depends what you're actually after. So like if I'm have $1 million, and let's say I'm a young couple, I think Northern Beach is perfect suit. You can buy a good 2-bedroom apartment close to the beach, good lifestyle, 30 minutes from the city. But if I have a growing family, I might go towards the west, where you can probably buy a house.
Affordability, I guess, is again what brings people back to these decisions. But there are still affordable price points, even within expensive cities. And as you said, it might not be the type of property you would live in, but if it's an investment, and think of it like your $1 million pot of cash, where can I best protect that asset?
Exactly.
Then think of it as an overall decision like that.
And you definitely got to do your research as well, like not just follow social media saying, hey, Sydney has done this and Melbourne has done this, because like we mentioned, they talk about the whole of Melbourne and whole of Sydney. So do research, like not because something looks cheap or look attractive. You got to do your research, because if your first property you do it wrong, it's a big hole that that you're in. So it'll take a while to climb out of it.
Yeah, and if you've got a local experience already, and it's sort of under your nose, then you're going to know, a lot about your local suburb anyway. It's the small things like knowing which street, is the best in the area. Where are your local school catchments? Where's your public transport links? So if you can buy local, at least for your first one, you're going to be experienced with all that knowledge.
Very good.
Otherwise it's a little bit like flying to a holiday destination and picking your hotel just based off of Google reviews.
Definitely.
might be great for you, might be bad.
Exactly. You got to experience it firsthand, and I think you get more confidence as well when you're buying somewhere local. Like if I grew up in an area, I know every street, I know every in the shops. I know if I buy a property, it's a lovely livelihood. Right? Like the area is very good. So I think that's from my end.
Do you reckon Sydney's got any more, or is it cooked?
Way more.
It's got more to go.
I think it's one of the most beautiful city out there that everyone looks forward to come into. Yes, the entry level price is a bit tough in terms of buying entering to your first property, but once you enter, I think it has a lot of potential there. So they recently had the zoning change.
Yeah.
So, that has a huge impact.
There's constantly new opportunities.
Exactly. So property still went up. So now there's more room for your property value to go up. So I think it's what do you call the golden goose that keeps on giving you the eggs. So it's never backing down.
There we go. Signing off. Hope that helps. If you need any help, just give us a call. If you want more information on the zoning policy changes, SMS the word zoning.
Rezone.
Yep. Rezone to 0460
0460 111
111, and we'll send out some info. But yeah, there's a lot of information there, and hopefully this helps just unpack the Sydney versus interstate decision.
Yeah. And we're always here to help.
Yeah, and tell you something in Sydney.
Yeah. All right, take care, guys.
See you later.